Why do humans cook? It sounds like a ridiculously simple question until you actually stop and think about it. Every single animal on this planet eats its food raw. Lions don't marinate their kills. Gorillas don't roast their fruit. Dolphins have never once prepared anything that could remotely be called a meal. And yet every human culture ever discovered, without a single exception, cooks its food. It doesn't matter the continent, the climate, or the level of technological development. From the most isolated hunter-gatherer tribes to modern industrial societies, every group of humans cooks. Cooking is the one genuinely universal human behavior, more universal than language, more than religion, more than any tool ever invented. Most people assume they cook because food tastes better that way, and yeah, it does, dramatically so. But that's just scratching the surface. The real story underneath is far deeper and honestly a little unsettling, because what fire actually did to the human body over hundreds of thousands of years is something that's going to completely change the way you look at your next meal. Before we go any further, if what you just heard already got you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button right now, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below telling us, did you ever stop to think about why you cook? Because what comes next will completely change the way you see every meal you've ever eaten. To really understand what fire did for us, you first need to picture what life looked like before it. Go back about 2 million years. Our ancestor, Australopithecus, is walking upright across the African savanna. Clever, curious, increasingly social. But when it comes to food, it's running almost exactly the same playbook as a modern chimpanzee. Raw fruit, tough fibrous roots that are barely digestible, leaves, bark, shoots, and the occasional insect or small animal grabbed opportunistically. That's it. That's the entire menu. And here's the part that should genuinely stop you. Chimpanzees today spend roughly half of every single waking hour just chewing, not hunting, not bonding with their group, not doing anything remotely complex or interesting, just chewing, because raw food demands that much mechanical processing before the body can extract anything useful from it, half a day, every day, just to stay alive. Harvard anthropologist Richard Wrangham wanted to understand this from the inside, so he spent years in Uganda studying chimpanzees and eating the same foods they ate: raw wild fruit, fibrous roots, tough plant material. His description of the experience was straightforward. It was genuinely terrible, hard, bitter, exhausting to chew for the extended time required to actually swallow it. 10 minutes on a single piece of fruit and almost nothing enjoyable to show for it. After all of that first-hand experimentation, Wrangham arrived at a conclusion that was as simple as it was striking. No modern human being, with our comparatively small jaws and short digestive tracts, could biologically survive on that diet long-term. Not wouldn't want to, couldn't. And that raises a question that should be sitting uncomfortably in your mind right now. If our bodies are this poorly suited to what our ancestors ate, something at some point must have changed everything. In 1997, Richard Wrangham was sitting at home in Cambridge, staring at the fireplace in his living room, when something clicked. After years of fieldwork, after all those hours studying chimpanzees and eating raw food in Uganda, the answer had been sitting right in front of him the whole time. Literally, fire-controlled, deliberate, transformative fire, and the idea that formed in his mind that evening would eventually challenge everything the scientific community thought it knew about what made us human. He published the hypothesis in 1999 and expanded it into a full book in 2009, Catching Fire: How Cooking Made Us Human. The central argument was as bold as it was elegant. Cooking wasn't a byproduct of human evolution. It was the engine that drove it. Most people assume we developed large, complex brains first and then used that intelligence to discover fire and cooking. Wrangham flipped that logic completely. Fire came first, and the brain grew as a direct biological consequence of what cooked food unlocked. To understand why, you need to think about what heat actually does to food at the molecular level. Cooking gelatinizes starches, making complex carbohydrates dramatically easier to break down. It denatures proteins, unfolding their structure so the body absorbs them far more efficiently. It ruptures cell walls, releasing nutrients that would otherwise pass straight through the digestive system. It neutralizes a wide range of natural toxins. In short, heat does an enormous amount of biological work before the food ever reaches your mouth. That's the concept at the core of Wrangham's theory. Cooking is external predigestion. The fire becomes an additional stomach. Your body receives food that's already been partially processed. And instead of burning all its energy on raw digestion, it has a massive caloric surplus left over. And that surplus had to go somewhere inside the human body, somewhere that would leave a permanent mark on our very anatomy. If Wrangham's hypothesis is correct, then the evidence shouldn't just exist in theory. It should be written directly into the fossil record, and that's exactly where things get extraordinary. Around 1.8 million years ago, a new species appears in the archaeological record, Homo erectus, and compared to everything that came before it, this creature looks radically, unmistakably different. Larger brain, smaller jaw, smaller teeth, and crucially, a significantly shorter digestive tract. The body had been reorganized from the inside out. The reduction of the gut is one of the most dramatic anatomical shifts in the entire story of human evolution. In other primates, the digestive system is massive. It has to be, because breaking down raw, fibrous, difficult food requires enormous intestinal real estate. In Homo erectus, that system was drastically compressed. The body had effectively decided it no longer needed such expensive digestive machinery, because the fire was already doing much of that work externally. Less intestine meant less energy required to maintain it, and that freed up energy had somewhere very specific to go. In modern humans, the brain actually outweighs the gut, a complete biological inversion compared to every other primate on the planet. That's not a coincidence, that's a trade. Brazilian neuroscientist Susana Herculano Hausel ran the numbers and landed on something that makes the whole picture snap into focus. For a gorilla to sustain a brain the size of a modern human brain while eating only raw food, it would need to eat continuously for 10 to 11 hours every single day. That's not just impractical, it's biologically impossible. So when you look at your own body, that comparatively weak jaw, that short digestive system, that enormous calorie-hungry brain sitting on top of your spine, none of that is a flaw. None of it is a weakness. Every single one of those features is the physical signature of an ancestor who crossed a threshold that could never be uncrossed, and the force that pushed them across it left behind something even more surprising than bones. The theory is compelling, the anatomy is convincing, but science needs physical proof, and that's exactly where archaeology steps in. The oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire use comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where researchers found fragments of burned bone dated to approximately 1 million years ago. It's a remarkable find. But notice that date, 1 million years. Homo erectus appeared 1.8 million years ago. That already leaves an 800,000-year gap sitting quietly in the middle of Wrangham's timeline. Then in 2022, a study published from Gesher Banat Yaakov in Israel pushed the specific evidence of food cooking back even further to 780,000 years ago. Researchers identified freshwater fish teeth that had been intentionally heated, making it the oldest direct archaeological evidence of deliberate food preparation ever found. A single site, a handful of fish teeth, and yet one of the most significant discoveries in the entire history of human nutrition research. So how do we explain those missing 800,000 years between Homo erectus and the earliest solid evidence? The most plausible answer is actually a geological one. Small, temporary, open-air fires simply don't survive millions of years of sediment, erosion, and time. The archaeological record overwhelmingly favors enclosed environments, caves, rock shelters, where ash, charcoal, and burned material can be preserved. Open landscapes leave almost nothing behind. By around 400,000 years ago, fire evidence becomes abundant, widespread, and completely unambiguous across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. The silence before that point likely reflects the limits of preservation, not the limits of human behavior. But all of this raises something that goes far beyond ancient bones and archaeological sites. Because if cooking is so deeply embedded in human biology that our bodies literally evolved around it, what happens when modern humans try to live without it? What does the evidence actually show when people today attempt to eat the way our pre-fire ancestors did? Theory and fossils are powerful, but sometimes the most revealing evidence isn't millions of years old. It's happening right now. In modern communities of people who have deliberately chosen to eat exactly the way our pre-fire ancestors did, strict raw food communities exist today, and researchers have studied them closely. What they consistently found is both fascinating and deeply unsettling. Without exception, people on long-term strict raw diets struggle to maintain healthy body weight over time. Not because they aren't eating enough volume, but because their bodies are burning more metabolic energy processing the raw food than they're actually extracting from it. It's a caloric deficit that compounds progressively. And then there's the reproductive data, which is where this stops being abstract and becomes genuinely alarming. Studies show that up to 50% of women on strict raw diets develop amenorrhea. Their menstrual cycles stop completely. The body, sensing an energy crisis, shuts down fertility before it shuts down anything else. It's one of the most primal survival responses the human organism has. Reproduction is expensive, and when calories are critically insufficient, the body eliminates it first. Think about what that means from an evolutionary perspective. A dietary pattern that prevents half of all reproductively capable females from having children isn't just unhealthy, it's existentially catastrophic for a species. One generation on that diet and the population collapses. No other conclusion is possible. What this reveals is something almost uncomfortable to sit with. Our bodies have permanently lost the biological infrastructure needed to survive on raw food alone. The large fermenting gut is gone. The powerful jaw is gone. The slow, patient digestive system is gone. What remained only functions when food has already been pre-processed by heat. And that means cooking isn't a lifestyle choice or a cultural preference. It's a biological dependency unlike anything else in the animal kingdom, with consequences that reach far deeper than anyone typically considers. The biological story is extraordinary on its own, but Wrangham's argument doesn't stop at anatomy. It reaches directly into the fabric of human society itself. Because cooking doesn't just change what happens inside your body, it creates something that had never existed before in the animal world: a meal, a shared event, prepared in a specific place, at a specific time, consumed collectively. That single shift from eating whenever you find food, wherever you find it, to gathering around a fire at the end of the day is arguably the founding moment of human social organization. Wrangham's most provocative claim is that the campfire is the true origin of the home, and not just the home as a physical space, but as a social unit to individuals coordinating resources, dividing labor, building something together around a shared fire. This isn't romantic love as a cultural invention. This is something far older and more practical, the arrangement that made cooperative survival possible, repeated across generations until it became the deepest structure of human life. And then there's the time. Cooking freed 4 to 5 hours every single day that our ancestors had previously spent chewing, 4 to 5 hours, that suddenly became available for something else entirely, for more strategic hunting, for crafting better tools, for teaching the next generation, for language, for music, for storytelling, for planning a future. The campfire was simultaneously a cooking surface, a predator barrier, a heat source, and a social anchor. Every function reinforced every other function, compounding across thousands of generations. The next time you turn on a stove or light a grill, you are participating in the oldest, most consequential, most uniquely human technology in the entire history of our species. Older than agriculture by at least 1 million years. Older than any written language. Older than any religion, city, or government. Every meal you cook is, in the most literal sense possible, a continuation of the act that made you human. Fire didn't just feed the human body, it built the human mind, the human family, and the human story. Everything you are, every conversation you've ever had, every idea you've ever thought, exists because somewhere in the deep past, an ancestor sat down next to a flame and changed the course of life on this planet forever. That's not a small thing. That's everything. If this video made you see yourself differently, if it made you feel the weight of that ancient connection, comment, "I am the fire below." That's how I know this reached you. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Hit that button and turn on the notification bell. Because every video on this channel is built to show you the hidden origin of things you thought you already understood. Share this with someone who loves science, history, or just wants to know why humans are so beautifully strange. And the next video is already on your screen. Don't let it wait.